thank you so much for joining our case sharing tonight. My name is Bernice. On behalf of IATC Hong Kong, I welcome you all to join us tonight for this special event. And after finishing three introductory talks last week, and we would like to give you some interesting practices and examples of using decentralized publication and also the blockchain technology. And it's our great honor to have Henry Chen, Mr. Henry Chen with us tonight. And of course, one of the reasons for us to invite Henry joining this case sharing is because I learned a lot from some online introduction about the interesting case about SCMP and the preserving history using NFT. So it's going to be our great honor and to have more details from Henry about this interesting project. And also I would like to introduce you about Patrick Mock. Professor Patrick Mock is one of our IATC directors, and of course, he's going to host our talk for tonight. Thank you so much for Patrick and also Henry. And over to you, Patrick, for your introduction about Henry's and also his interesting project. Thank you so much.
Hi, good evenings. Thanks, Bernice, for short introductions. It's so great to be moderator tonight. And the topic suggested by IATC is quite interesting, which is a case study about SCMP's first attempt to put some of the archives in a new way through the NFTs technologies. The case actually already happens years ago, if I remember correctly. But I think the experience to share would be quite an interesting stories. We would like to listen to Henry's more in-depth analysis or descriptions tonight. Henry is the co-founder and head of growth and innovations of the company Artifact Labs, and which is one of the key stakeholders pushing SCMPs on the NFT wave. I think it would be, we expect, quite an interesting story, and inviting Henry, without further ado, I hope that you can tell us more about the stories about the SMP cases. Please, Henry.
Thank you so much, Patrick, for your kind introduction, and thank you, Bernice and IATC, for having me today. Let me quickly share my screen and make sure you guys can see. Does it look okay, Patrick?
Yes, thank you.
Awesome, awesome. Okay, but yeah, thank you everyone for your time and interest today. I'm Henry, one of the co-founder and also head of the growth and innovation at Artifact Labs. I have personally been involved in the NFT and Web3 space for about 2 full years at this point, and is very, very privileged to play a role in SCMP, South China Morning Post's kind of foray into Web 3.0 and playing around with NFTs, and ultimately moving from a project that was incubated within SCMP into a company that is now called Artifact Labs. So today's agenda, I'll kick off with a few quick definitions and then move on to SCMP's case studies, and then finally share a few updates brought to you from Artifact Labs. So, okay, definitions. The Web3 topic has been very popular, but we have, there are many kind of terms and words thrown around and used in many different ways. So I just want to set the stage with 4 keywords. Number 1, blockchain. What is blockchain? In our point of view, blockchain is the distributed network or a distributed database. It is the underlying technology that allows for the immutable recording of information. And that's very important to us, and we think that the power of blockchain is actually, of course, in the immutability, but how it gets there, it's through a consensus mechanism. So the implication of that is that the more participants there are that joins the blockchain network, the more secure kind of the memory of it is. So Blockchain actually started at first with Bitcoin in 2008 or 9-ish with a publish of a paper. And it's been many, many years already. Nowadays, there are many popular blockchains that you may or may not have heard of. Bitcoin, Ethereum being the main ones, but also many others that are designed to do slightly different things. The second term I want to talk about is NFTs. So NFT stands for non-fungible token, and it's a kind of a digital token that sits on a blockchain network. You can think of it as a unit of data that sits on the blockchain network. There are non-fungible tokens and fungible ones. The difference is fungibles are things that you can exchange and it's not completely unique. So a unit of a currency is the same with another unit of the same currency versus non-fungible token that's only truly one version of it or one copy of it on the blockchain. So it's important because that immediately opens up the use cases for blockchain in things like art, in things like virtual assets and digital properties, in addition to just currency and tokenization. We think the utility of this technology is huge, is vast, and is a key building block of Web3 and what we call the open metaverse. Web3. So we think Web3 is the new internet, and there are three key characteristics. Number one is it is a decentralized internet powered by blockchain. It's composed of many different platforms and applications, and not one platform has the authority to dominate the network. Number two, it's a connected network. Even though not one platform can dominate, the language and the protocol is interconnected, so people can build on the same network without kind of the the downside risks with it. Number three is it's a full and wealth. There's a wealth of digital assets in Web3, and defined by NFTs and defined by fungible tokens, where everything has a provable scarcity to it and has individual ownership to it. And those are elements that in the Web2 world we think do not exist quite yet. So lastly, metaverse. So we actually think the definition of metaverse, we take a pretty loose definition to it. We think the metaverse is a digital world where concepts of scarcity and value exist. And actually, this concept has existed for a very long time. I think growing up, many of you guys have interacted with, potentially online collection and or even online games, and these concepts already exist in those contexts. But what's different now than before in the metaverse is actually not just it's tied to virtual reality where you can experience it in an immersive way. I think that's one element. But the more important part is that the new metaverse, the next era of metaverse, the open metaverse, will be built on top of Web3 and using NFTs as its building block. So in our opinion, the next big wave of metaverse will be decentralized, will be open, will be connected, and will also be filled with digital assets. And that's why it's so powerful. So now I want to go into our story with the South China Morning Post. As many of you guys know, South China Morning Post is a newspaper company based in Hong Kong. We actually have 119 years of history, and it's turning 120 years old this November. It's been around for a very, very long time. It's the newspaper of record of Hong Kong. And for those of you guys who have followed us in the past couple of years, you'll know that the South China Morning Post have gone through a digital transformation in the past couple of years. Chapter one of that transformation was really about moving it from a traditional newspaper where, majority of the revenue is driven by print. How they engage with the audience was with the print paper, into what we call a digital or a modern media company. So through this past couple years, with the leadership of our then CEO, Gary, SCMP has completely transformed into a company with tens and millions of monthly active users online viewing the newspaper, from a company with a readership that is predominantly Hong Kong to now predominantly global, of which Hong Kong is actually just a subset of it. So through that, we've laid a lot of foundations with this digital transformation. Of course, established different social channels, digital infrastructure in the back end. One very key thing that SCMP as a company did was the digitization of a lot of its historical assets. So when you think about it, 100 and almost 20 years of history of newspaper was previously stored in paper or in film, just in a factory here in Hong Kong, humidity controlled, hoping that nothing will happen to it. So it's with this transformation that we took the step and investment in actually fully digitizing everything. So right now, all of SCMP's archives is already digitized, stored in one of the cloud service providers for accessible from our own company, somewhere on the internet in a cloud server. So that to us was chapter one of the transformation. And we think we did a very good job in the transformation, and we're very excited about it. But through this process, we couldn't help but think about what is the next chapter. And this is when blockchain became very, very interesting to us because of its ability to immutably preserve information. To us, our assets are our most important our archives are our most important assets, in addition to the people and the brand that we have. So what can we do to preserve it, right? And in addition to preservation, how can we innovate our business model with these new tools? And how can we deepen our engagement with this new age of audience that now currently sits in Instagram and Twitter and social media, etc. But we think will very, very quickly move into NFTs and collecting them and engagement through ownership. So with those hypotheses, those kind of three things to prove, proving that this new technology can immutably preserve, can innovate in business model, and can deepen user engagement, we looked into NFTs and decided to do an experiment that was called Artifacts by SCMP. So the first use case, Artifacts by SCMP, we actually began the journey almost exactly 2 years before today, where it was a market when NFT became mainstream popular with a few auctions. I also remember Time magazine at that time auctioned a few NFTs with their very notable covers. And we looked into it pretty seriously. And through months of work, we ultimately launched Artifact by SCMP, our first Web3 and NFT project. It was also the first use case of something called the Artifact Standard, which I'll talk about a little later on, and is a first example of what we call a historical NFT collection. So the first series of the Artifacts by SCMP was what we call the 1997 Premium Series, where we took the entirety of SCMP's archive from the year 1997, every single one of the A1 cover, and there are 362 of them, and we created a NFT product out of it. The reason we picked the year 1997, as those of you guys from Hong Kong will know that it is a truly momentous year for Hong Kong's history. And as we look into the archives, we realize it wasn't just the handover that made it impactful and interesting. It was the year of the avian flu that has impacted Hong Kong people's psyche and how they deal with the pandemic, which we still see today. It was the year of tragedies, Princess Diana's passing and the losing of one of our China's key leaders, Deng Xiaoping, one of the most influential men that really impacted Hong Kong's path in recent history. It was the year of the Asian financial crisis, where many of the lessons were learned. And we actually look into each day and we saw that 1997 was also the chapter where a lot of the foundation that were laid that we currently see today. So I found this to be super interesting that there were reportings about the West Kowloon district, about the vision of it, all the way back in 1997. There's also a discussion and vision about the latest MTR line, the Tuen Mun to Ma On Shan line. That actually already was in discussion all the way back in 1997. So to us, it was a fascinating year. And we decided to kind of make a bet on this specific set of archive to launch the NFT collection. So with the help of our editors and our librarians within the South China Morning Post, and just to clarify, at this point, myself included and our team were still employees of the South China Morning Post. We belonged to a team where we were responsible for testing new businesses. So we were employees at that point, and we worked with editors, etc., to pick out these assets, and we categorize them, or bucket them into 4 different rarity levels based on the content. As you can see on the left-hand side of the screen, the one in the middle in color is the legendary cover, the July 1st cover of the handover, where in the entire collection, there are only 2 copies of it. We also identified a few super rare covers, rare, and so on, to create a level of gamification kind of among the 362 days. When a collector purchased this product, they actually get it in a form of mystery boxes. So one box contains 5 randomized days from this collection. And we went for this route for 2 reasons. One is we wanted everyone to have an equal chance to get the rarest day. We didn't want to go with an auction route and take away this piece of memory from the hands of the majority, right? We didn't want it to be, and for example, an auction where it's only going to the highest bidder. This is our shared history, and we think everyone should have an equal chance of getting that. So that's reason number 1. Reason number 2 was through this gamification, we wanted our collectors to rediscover history. 1997 was a good number of years ago, and for many of our collectors, they were still very young, and they may have forgotten many of the chapters. So through this opening experience, we actually got a lot of feedback that collectors saw, were surprised by how interesting the front page was. They were able to rediscover a history that they may know and have forgotten about, or they didn't know. So we saw it as an opportunity to preserve and also rejuvenate history. So with that setup, we went to the market in March of 2022. And very fortunately, we were very, very positively received by the market and by the community. Just within 2 hours of launch, we sold out of our first drop, which included first half of the year. A month later from that, we went to the market with the second half of the year and sold out our second drop, also in just over 2 hours. So altogether, we sold about 13,000 NFTs with our SCMP archives. But that was actually not where the journey ends for these collectors. Them buying the NFT is actually just the beginning. So as an NFT holder, our team brought to them several different experiences and utilities and benefits that are exclusive to them. One of my favorite feature that we built was the community wall. So prior to Artifacts by SCMP, there was actually no way for an average everyday reader to go back into SCMP's archive to look for old newspaper covers. I think we only go back 5 years, maybe, and everything before that were only available for researchers or academic institutions where we have an agreement with. But we thought that was such a shame because this is a piece of history that belongs to all of us and should be visible to all of us. So after we sold all of the NFTs, we actually went to our community for help. We wanted to see if they would be willing to share this piece of history that they now own a version of. So we created what we call the community wall with 362 slots, empty slots on our website. And we ask our collectors to voluntarily share the image and the metadata that's behind it with the general public. We didn't really know what to expect, but just within weeks and days and weeks, the entire wall was immediately filled, and now it's 100% complete. So anyone can go to artifact.scmp.com, click Community Wall 1997 Premium Series, and see every single NFT and the front page, and read about what the day was about. And we couldn't have done it without the community's help. And we thought that was a very, very powerful moment where we proved that, you know, a community behind an NFT collection can be very influential and can be powerful. The second utility was around metaverse, and specifically the sandbox, which I'll talk about a little later. And the third is continued collections and airdrops that we brought to the collector. So two specific examples I want to mention. One was when we sold out of the collection, our SCMP reporters actually wrote an article about the sellout. And we thought because the collectors help us get to this milestone, we would actually mint this article as an NFT and give it back to everyone who have participated. And it was a very welcomed kind of gift and engagement by a lot of our collectors. And a lot of them still say this is one of the favorite things that they've done. They've seen the impact they were able to make to the community. The second example that was not captured in the image here is actually related to Jumbo Floating Restaurant, which unfortunately capsized middle of last year. At that point, as Hong Kong's newspaper of record, it was important for us to record it and for us to, you know, forever preserve this historical asset that once belonged to Hong Kong. So we actually created a free NFT product with the Jumbo Floating Restaurant, and we gave it to anyone who would mint it completely for free, just for the preservation of Jumbo, because how important it was. As a result, more than 20,000 people logged onto our website, minted the Jumbo NFT, and now there are 20,000 plus copies of an image of Jumbo now sitting on a blockchain that will forever be preserved. So I think these three examples is to say that, you know, NFT is not just about the sale of the asset itself, but to what end is the NFT for, right? So from these examples, we were able to prove that it's able to preserve history immutably. Very fortunately, we were able to prove there is a strong business case for trying out in the Web3 and NFT space. And we were able to prove specifically with the community wall and with the airdrops that Web3 and NFTs allow us to engage with our constituents in a way that we haven't been able to done before. So that was a very, very powerful kind of learning experience for us. I'm happy to answer questions towards the end, but I'll go through a couple more things pretty quickly. I want to quickly touch on our work in the metaverse as well, specifically in the sandbox. And I think many of you guys may have heard of Sandbox, a virtual land platform that is now building in the open metaverse. And pretty early on, SCMP were able to acquire a piece of land in the space and decided to experiment there. We want to experiment two specific things. Number one is, can we use this new model to do storytelling of our history? Because SCMP is a storytelling company. It reports on facts, but it also tells stories that are based on facts that are important for people to know. And now that we've accumulated all these assets, we wonder if we can jump out of the paper and text and help us retell that story in a way that people can experience. So with that in mind, we built our first prototype, the Hong Kong Star Ferry Pier, that was launched in the Sandbox, also in last March. So with this, as you can see on the screen, we built the entire central pier inside the metaverse. And we actually built two versions of it. One you can see on the screen that's based on the what currently it looks like. So if you go to Central, you can see the exact streets and even like the ATM machines around the Central Pier. We also built one from the 1980s that we only remember from history and photo, when the pier was still in the old, kind of right by the old Queen's Pier and the Edinburgh Pier. And we built that so people have a new way to kind of experience the history of Hong Kong. And we introduced many characters that were important to the pier and designed quests that would take players from the present back to the past and then back to the present. So they learn little chapters about history. I would encourage all of you guys, if you haven't already, in the upcoming kind of launches, play around with our metaverse experience and play in Hong Kong, right? The result of this was also very well received, and we were pleasantly surprised. When we launched in the alpha season of the Sandbox game, we ranked 5th out of 37 experiences during the season. 2 of them were Sandbox kind of own hubs, lobbies, so that doesn't really count. But in front of us, there was a professional game maker, and then there was Snoop Dogg, and then there was SCMP. So we were very, very proud of this achievement that, frankly, we were so surprised by this as a newspaper company trying to build a experience in a game. So yeah, if you guys have a chance, I would strongly suggest that you guys experience it. And we have new experiences coming as well. But before we talk about what's next, I want to quickly talk about what happened to our team from then. After we launched Artifacts by SCMP and we launched the Sandbox Metaverse, our team got many inquiries from local institutions, of companies with historical IPs, of media companies around the world, asking us about how we can build in Web3, how we can innovate with NFTs. And ultimately, we decided to stand up our current company called Artifact Labs that is now properly spin off from SCMP. We build NFT products and platforms specifically focus on historical IPs. We help brands tell their stories and engage with new customers. Specifically, we work with brands and commercial corporations. We work with museums, we work with galleries, we work with academic institutions, and of course, media organizations. I mentioned very early on that we developed something called the Artifact Standard that was specifically used for historical NFTs. So it is a metadata standard that attached to the NFT contract so that all of the information that matters to that asset is properly captured. So for instance, a SCMP A1 cover, the importance of it is not just the visual image of it, but it's when it was printed which reporter wrote the articles, which photographer took the photos, what the stories were about, where this piece of paper was printed, who was mentioned in the story. Like all of that information is actually what makes the NFT valuable, not just the image itself. And before our standard, there was no way, there was nothing in the market that can actually capture all of the context with NFTs. So we spent a lot of time digging into what are the best ways to catalog historical assets? How do we make it interoperable across blockchains, but existing cataloging databases, but also across art, culture, media organizations, and more. I think we can talk about just the standard for probably hours. So I'm just going to touch on it today, but happy to dive into it a little more at a later time. With Artifacts by SCMP, we were able to build a community of collectors from all over the world, predominantly from Hong Kong at the moment, but will be growing across all over the world, who cares about history, are willing to engage and willing to pay to preserve a chapter of them, and are willing to engage in very interesting ways. So you'll see on the right-hand side of the screen, one of our ambassadors is actually a streamer on Twitch, and he streamed one of the pack openings for his followers of opening our product and engaging with his followers through that. So we think this is very unique and very important in the Web3 space to have a proper community and really continue to provide value to them and give them interesting and meaningful assets and experiences to interact with. I'll quickly close by talking about what's next for us. On the Sandbox side, we actually partner with the Hong Kong Philharmonic's Orchestra to launch the first Metaverse Symphony. So that would be another historical recreation of actually the Statue Square in Central that many of you guys are familiar with. We're working with Goods of Desire, a local brand, to preserve Hong Kong heritage and create NFT products out of many of the knickknacks that are from Hong Kong's past history. We are also working with the Titanic to tokenize all of their artifacts that were salvaged from under the ocean from Titanic. We will also be setting up a DAO, a distributed autonomous, decentralized autonomous organization to make decisions on how the RMS Titanic company will continue to make decisions related to the current wreck that is still under the ocean. But I'll pause here for today. Hope you guys enjoyed the sharing and happy to take any questions at this point. But thank you for your time. Patrick, I'll pass it back over to you.
Thank you very much, Henry. So let us see, will there be any questions from the online community attendees? And let's see. If not, I kick off the initial discussions. Well, from the perspectives of SCMP, and it is a fact that the company has, as you said, the company has started the digitization quite a long time ago, and which makes the archives available online, searchable, benefits the researchers to do their own works, or even reporters doing the historical research based on the SCMP archive, which is already quite a valuable asset. So what's the motivation to go into the second chapter? Would it search with the intention to search a new model or a new product? So would you explain a little bit more on this point?
Yeah, absolutely. So it directly connects to the 3 points we have mentioned, actually. So preservation, business model, and also a new way to engage. So first on preservation, yes, we have made the transition from paper to digital, so that was a huge step forward. Then when we look at the storage of these assets, it was either stored in a local on-premise database, like a big computer that is in one of the SCMP office. There may be a copy there, or it's on a cloud service provider, which is very secure. But in our opinion, if we're thinking about, truly historical assets, that level of storage was not yet immutable for us. It's prone to edits and potentially disaster, where it would take out the copies of these visuals and these assets. So we saw an opportunity with blockchain for this, and we decided to go, to actually upload everything through NFTs to a network that is truly immutable. So that is the first step. The second was around business model. So as we've mentioned, we did sell or kind of, we had a subscription product where we would give out these archives to research institutions and academic institutions. But to be frank, the potential opportunity there was not enough to cover the expense of digitizing the entire assets. And we expect this to be a continuous process. So to make it work, we had to look for additional opportunities. And we think that with the collector community, with the enthusiasts out there, there's a way to tap into them. And then the third point is around engagement. We truly think that engagement through owning something is very, very different from engagement through just reading about something. So it was with those three reasons that we decided to kind of dig into the space.
Okay, thank you, Henry. I'm sorry to miss two raising hands on the floor. So Dr. Bella, would you like to ask your questions to Henry?
Yes, thank you so much, Patrick, and thank you so much, Henry, for your fascinating presentation. I have two questions, actually. As you mentioned that SCMP has gone through multiple rounds of digital transformation, right? And probably this is the first time that SCMP has spun off the Artifacts as a startup, like enterprise, like as we say, right? But I would like to hear a little bit more why the Artifact founder at the very, very beginning choose to pursue this journey, like instead of, running the traditional organization, working around archive or, historical document or something like that, right? Such as like the NGOs or the museums that probably may raise the donation or something like that more. And yeah, and then the second question is, did you get supported by SCMP at first, like whether they invest in Artifacts by itself, or how did you manage to raise funds or investment or revenue at a very early stage? Like, because you mentioned that you also exploring to create new products like in Sandbox or Titanic, right? But how do you work with these partners? Like whether they are your customers or you got the investment and you partner with them in terms of creating a new product. So I would like to hear from you. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Bella, for your question. So I'll answer the first question first. In the very beginning, this project very much started as a incubation project within the South China Morning Post. We were trying to, it really was a thought experiment for the media company itself. Could it have started from an NGO or other museums or cultural institutions? Probably they could have started something like this, but it was just a factor of our team came up with the idea at the time that we were still at the Post, and with our then CEO Gary at the leadership, who actually ultimately left SCMP to lead Artifact Labs as a founder. So it was very much context of where everyone were at that time, but also the reason we decided to spin out of the South China Morning Post and not keep it within was that this is a much broader project than just focusing on media or just focusing on SCMP. There were just through the build process, by the level of interest, we immediately saw kind of the value of what this could be. So it's with those considerations that we decided to spin off, and how the team kind of started from this way. And then this connects to your second question of how the team got started. We were very fortunate that at that time, we as SCMP employees or team were given the resources and time and space to kind of experiment and build this out as a product. And then once we were able to prove there is a commercial case and that there was a business case of the platform, we kind of SCMP have already invested our time right at that point. And then now that we've decided to spin off as a proper company, we did seek out for venture funding, and that's in progress. But looking forward, we will definitely there'll be two routes. One will be kind of supported by the ongoing funding activities, but the other route will be by our businesses, which leads to your final question around our partnerships, for example, with Titanic, with SCMP, etc. So we are quite flexible on the collaboration model, whether it's in a kind of a partnership fashion where we share the incomes and resources that comes in from these products, or through a more of a professional service arrangement. We are open to both, and it really depends on the project and the context. I hope that answers all of your questions. Thank you for asking.
Yes, thank you so much.
Hi, Anika. Thanks for joining the discussions. Would you also raise your questions?
Yeah. So I was just curious, right? So it seems like from what you've just shared, and thank you again for the super clear and insightful sharing, it seems like Artifact Labs is an expert partner that helps to incubate these sort of Web3 efforts of very storied brands of a lot of IP they want to bring, a renewed sense of relevance to, which I love. And I know for a fact, so I come from and I currently work in a traditional creative agency background. So I know there are a lot of major brands out there who want to do this right now. So I'm a little bit curious to know, right, if the kind of partners that you work with, are they sort of limited to those who want to preserve IP? Or are you also sort of looking ahead into the future of, say, NFTs? Because there are so many different use cases, right? So for example, like in the space of, loyalty, membership, or, creation of fandoms, etc. So I guess I'm just curious to know why, and it could be a good thing, right? Why this fixation on preservation of history? Just wanted to learn a little bit more about that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Annika, and thank you for your kind words. I think you've articulated what we do better than I have. But I think that's a great question. Our focus on historical IPs and preservation is really from, I think, one, who we are, how we started as a company, and two, this niche and this opportunity in the market that we don't see anyone else kind of tackling. And we think it's a huge market. And we think this is where we can differentiate, and it is a very important kind of problem that no one else is tackling yet. With that said, I think the examples that you have mentioned, loyalty programs, different ways to make an NFT product or product experience interesting. We're definitely adapting all of them and creating kind of product experiences that will generate that kind of new era of fandom or excitement. That is very much our intention. But from a storytelling perspective, we wanted to be rooted in existing IP and existing stories, because there are already plenty to tell. And we think no one is addressing that right now. Everyone is trying to come up with a new project with a new IP that will promise to do X, Y, Z. And I think we can actually differentiate by actually kind of rejuvenate history and kind of unlock the value that was previously locked in this valuable historical assets. So I hope that makes sense. And I think it's a great question. And we sometimes ask ourselves that, but I think we're quite confident in our positioning and the opportunity and the impact of this work.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Maybe I have follow-up questions along the line of Annika. Well, the products Artifact Labs has created, it seems to me, more than the original historical artifacts. There are some other elements added in it, maybe a gamified elements or new ways of storytelling. So how would you foresee what would be the next generation of user? Because for those who are maybe not interested in that sort of thing, apparently you are looking for a new assumptions that there are a new emerging groups of user, maybe the next generation, I don't know, but how you foresee the user or the potential user in the market?
Yeah, so I think Artifact Labs is really about bringing more users and adapting them into Web 3.0. So yes, the existing kind of the crypto community, the NFT trading community is currently a part of our customer. But if we look towards the future, it's really about using NFTs and Web3 as tools. And Patrick, you've mentioned going beyond kind of having a historical asset as an NFT. I think that's absolutely correct. I think preserving history, I think, can be done through that way, but can be done through historical storytelling by creating this scenes where people get to re-experience it, and because it's stored on the blockchain, that we're preserving that in a different way, right? So we through these kind of new products and engagement models, our thought very much is to bring the kind of the mainstream quote unquote Web 2 users through each of these IPs they may be familiar with, and then kind of work them into Web 3 and have them experience these new tools and mechanisms and ownership. So that's kind of the way we see the market and the community and why we built the things we built.
And sorry, Bernice.
I had a question. Thank you so much for Henry's very inspiring sharing. And this question is, it seems that the whole project that you been engaged is very successful, and it seems you don't have any obstacles when you are pitching your boss or someone higher level of your, because as you said, SCMP is a very with a lot of history, and of course with a team who knows very well about NFTs and blockchain technology. They know the potential of doing it. But by the time 2 years ago, I think maybe there are some challenges when you try to pitch someone else in your company about the whole project, or to let no matter the society or someone who don't know what you are doing. How can you break through all these challenges?
Yeah, I think we were very, very fortunate to have had a leadership team that was already well versed in digital. Just through the digital transformation, we had a leadership team that was very kind of, very, 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 very receptive to new ideas and digital ideas. I think that was the prerequisite that our team was able to do this on. but it definitely was not without obstacles. I think there are definitely obstacles from a market perspective. We had to do a lot of education on telling people, because at that point NFT were mostly pictures, right, of cartoon characters, of monkeys, etc. And we had to do a lot of explanation and education on why we think historical assets should be made into NFTs. So from a market perspective, we had to do a lot of work there. And then from a internal operations perspective, working within the CMP, kind of even with the support, there was still a lot of operational steps that we had to take that were very different, right? We're setting up, the Discord servers, running the Twitter account, being very flexible and nimble with collaborations, and not to mention building an entire technology product around NFTs. So yeah, we were very fortunate to have a very nimble team within the CMP early on that have identified themselves as they're interested in the space and was willing to kind of support us in the journey and be a part of the journey. So there were definitely obstacles, and I think we were very fortunate along the way that kind of through our work and then through time we were able to solve them kind of one by one. But it was definitely a journey to do that.
Thank you, Henry. Dr. Bella has the follow-up questions.
Thank you so much. Sorry for my follow-up question. Actually, I'm a fan of Gary, who is the co-founder of Artifact Labs, right? And then I just wonder, I don't know him personally, but I just wonder why did he leave Artifact Labs? And then I'm not sure how it works, because he's mentioned that he's becoming one of the council member of the Artifacts, right? So I'm not sure how does it work, because you as a company and then you have the council. Yeah, I want to know the story behind. Thank you so much.
Yeah, Dr. Bella, thank you for following us so closely, and I'll share with Gary that he has a fan in the audience tonight as well. So I just wanted to clarify, Gary is not leaving Artifact Labs. He is still very much a part of our team. He still sits a couple rows from me on a daily basis, and he will stay attached to Artifact Labs as a founder, as a board member, and also as a council member. So I think that's step number one. We were very, very fortunate to be able to bring on a new CEO, Philip Pong, to now lead the organization, who is very, very experienced in crypto space and taking startups from 0 to 1. So I just wanted to clarify that point, that Gary is not leaving. I think that's number one. Number two, on your point about the role of the Artifact Council, that is truly to manage what we call the Artifact metadata standard. So it's an important part of our equation to have this metadata standard be a part of all of our smart contracts. And we think that this is a must-have step in creating this class of NFTs, or what we call historical NFTs or historical asset tokens. So the council's role is to manage the standard, help us govern it, and evolve the standard over time. So Gary will, continue to play a big role there in governing and managing the standard as well. I hope that answers your questions.
Thank you, Henry. Well, maybe I pick up the questions about the metadata. It seems that I don't have any ideas how a digital metadata by the NFT structure, well, would it be the same value or functions, just like other library of archives metadata, which make different libraries or museums and interoperable? I'm not sure whether on the NFT side, the same thing would be required. And that's why Artifact Labs would like to focus as one of the major tasks?
Yeah, Patrick, thank you for picking up on this. I think you've hit it like exactly. The metadata standard is designed to, number one, capture context and therefore the significance. And number two, ensure that all of the assets or historical items that we do mint as NFTs in the future becomes interoperable through the metadata standard. Currently, of course, from museum catalogs, etc., there are existing standards, and while they're not perfectly interoperable, there are a lot of overlaps. In Web3 space, specifically with NFTs, that does not exist. The only existing metadata standard related to NFTs that is well adopted is with ERC 721, and then there's a metadata extension of which there are very, very little requirements. So every NFT that is minted, on Ethereum blockchain, for example, you can have any metadata design and form, and therefore every NFT collection that's minted there is essentially its own data structure and its own ecosystem. There is no way for them to talk to each other, to build with each other. For us, it's important for us to connect history in a way, right? Like we don't want a historical NFT collection with SCMP. We want to make sure that it is connected to, let's say, we work with a local museum and they have a collection and they're related. We want to ensure that there is a way to properly connect them on the blockchain because it's forever. So that is super, super important to us. And that's why we have put so much work in the standard. We have a council that believes in the value of this and that all of our NFT work will also kind of use the standard. So that's the thinking behind the metadata standard.
So the documents about the artifacts metadata is publicly accessible, isn't it?
Yeah, so we have a dated version that is publicly accessible on our website in a white paper format. Very soon, it will be available in a different way to the public, but I can't share too much yet. But it will definitely be publicly available, and that's very much the intention.
Okay, so look forward to share your second secret next time.
Thank you.
Okay, any further questions? Or Bernice, do you have any?
Yes, can I ask the last question maybe?
Sure.
Because I'm so appreciate about the community war that you created. Because for some of our some NFT projects that I know, it's of course they are creating a kind of a connection with the buyers, and also the loyalty is something that you would like to develop with them. But I particularly like the community war. It's you make this commercial or a financial based orientated gesture to become like everyone could share their history and it owned not only by some particular people, but it creates a community that could be able to share our history. That is a very touching, I mean, a gesture for me to know more about the ideas of creating this community. And could you tell us a little bit more about how you making connections with the people buying the NFT of CMP, and how are you going to sustain it, to keep the relationship sustained in such a context?
Yeah, thank you, Bernice, for asking about the community. I think that's a great kind of wrap-up question as well. I think to us, we can't do what we do without a community of people who care about history, are willing to collect and engage over them, and with us over them. So they're kind of the essence of everything. I think to answer how we can continue to engage them in the future, I'm gonna be frank and say we don't have the perfect kind of recipe, right? I think it's very much a trial and error. We will learn with the community along the way. We'll keep them involved. We'll test things with them to see what works, what doesn't work, what resonates with them, what keeps them engaged. And I think this is part of the charm and power of Web3 is because that they are a owner, they don't need to volunteer themselves to have a say. They're owners, so they have a right and they have the responsibility to help the development of the community. Now, on our side, on the build side, on the IP side, of course, we'll continue to offer new product experiences, whether it's metaverse, whether it's online, offline events, whether it's additional benefits to, for example, the SCMP business, access to certain things. Those, of course, will continue to provide. But I think what's more important is that the community of collectors as owners engage with us throughout that process. And we hope, our hope is that there will be a artifact community that cares about history more than just the NCMP history, and will kind of continue to support us along the journey. So yeah, I think that's a great question to wrap our session on today. So thank you again, Bernice.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Henry, for your sharing. And any final remarks from you, Patrick?
No, just a big thanks to Henry and all the participants.
Thank you. Thank you so much for all your participation and in particular to let us know more about the project. And I'm looking forward to know more about your interesting project in the future, Henry. And thank you so much for everyone's participation. And on behalf of IATC-HK, I would like to also let you know that we are going to have our next case sharing for tonight, 9:15 for another case sharing about selling and light cubed on NFTs. So it's another interesting project about working with NFTs and with performing arts. So stay in touch with us, and also thank you so much again for Patrick and also Henry for all of your participation. I'll see you very soon. Thank you so much and good evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.